Guppies have inspired and captivated generations of fish keepers. So this fish has been the gateway for many people into the aquarium hobby. So today, let's go ahead and talk about taking care of these hardy little fish. Guppies have a pretty interesting origin. Guppies were named after someone named Robert John Lechmere Guppy, who sent the species from Trinidad to the Natural Museum in London. However, he was not the first person to discover the guppy. The first person to discover the guppy was someone named Wilhelm Peters, who discovered it in Venezuela in 1859. So kind of an interesting history on the discovery of guppies. Guppies are generally found in the Caribbean and northern South America. We really do not need to match the water parameters to their natural environment since they have been captive bred for many generations now. The closest thing you'll be able to find to a wild-caught guppy is today's Endler, which is the guppy's closely related cousin. Given their small size, guppies can go in a variety of different tanks. I know a lot of people would recommend a 5-gallon. I personally like a 10-gallon better. Just gives a group the ability to breed, produce some fry, without having any overcrowding issues and affecting water quality. I actually like to keep them in a 20-gallon high, especially when I'm breeding specific strains. But it is also a lot of fun to put them in larger tanks, such as 75 gallons or 55 gallons, to let them grow out and let the colony explode to see what it comes back with. So that way it gives them a lot of swimming space, gives them places for the fish to hide, and generally it's a really nice setup to have a really nice big tank planted, reasonably aquascaped, and to see all the guppies swimming around with all the different colors and sizes and everything else. So definitely a lot of fun, but keeping them in a larger tank is definitely ideal. So water parameters in a nutshell is that your guppies would prefer warmer water, water with a higher pH, higher hardness level, and definitely very clean. Unlike guppies of the past, which were kept in fish bowls and other things back in the 50s and 60s, so today's modern guppy is more than likely raised on a fish farm in Southeast Asia, where temperatures are generally a more tropical environment. So just like your other tropical fish, guppies will need a temperature anywhere from 76 to 78 degrees. An additional important fact about temperature in guppies, the warmer the temperature, the more that you will speed up the guppy's metabolism, and therefore you would actually shorten its life. If you keep a guppy at 80 degrees, it may live something like 18 months. Keeping it at 74, 75, maybe it will live 2.5 years. pH and hardness is definitely something that is also extremely important with your guppies. Guppies definitely prefer harder water, so in a lot of places they are raised in brackish water. With those places, salt water is actually cheaper than fresh water. It doesn't have to be processed. Anything above 7.2 I find would be fine. The water here where I live in Michigan definitely pushes closer to 8, and it's absolutely perfect for guppies. Hardness wise, it's generally around about 150 or so. One of the things I do use to buffer my water here is I use a piece of saltwater coral rock that I used in the days that I had my reef tanks. I have a ton of it, so I just put a piece of it in one of my tanks, and that generally does really well to buffer the pH, even though I probably don't need it here with water changes and how my water is made up here. But for people in soft water states, one of the recommendations has been to use crushed coral, and that does do an excellent job of buffering the water as well. If you don't buffer the water and you have softer water, the guppies definitely will fall apart for you. One of the easiest ways to maintain good water quality in your guppy tank is to run something like a sponge filter. Rather simple actually. Just go ahead and put an air source, hook up an air line and hook it up to your sponge filter, and then just perform the regular cleaning and maintenance on it, and then you should be all set, both mechanically and biologically. Another good option that I use is something called a box filter, very similar to a sponge filter and how it's set up. You can add additional media types such as carbon and stuff into the box filter if you'd like, but generally that is definitely another way that's pretty simple and straightforward to maintain your water quality. The other way I like to use on my larger tanks is something called the hang-on-back filter. Just definitely does a really good job keeping the water clean in your larger guppy tanks as well. One thing to keep in mind when you're running a hang-on-back filter is you need to find something to cover the intake for the filter. I generally like to use an intake sponge, that way the fry don't get sucked up into the impellers of the filter. One thing I don't recommend for guppy tanks is running a sump. I've never found a good way to cover the overflows of the sump so you don't get guppies down in the sump, Guppies have an uncanny way of getting through the return pump in some systems and ending up in tanks where they're not wanted. Guppies are some of the easiest fish in the aquarium hobby to get to eat, taking a variety of different foods. So my guppies do eat a variety of different foods. I feed them anything from Northern veggie, rapashi on occasion. They will eat a variety of frozen food like cyclops, maybe even a bloodworm or two. One of my favorite foods though is the Aquarium Co-op easy fry food. It's really easy, especially if you have a lot of tanks. You just squirt around. Feed all the different sizes of guppies as well as your other live bears, so definitely something to keep in mind. You can actually even feed larger pellets and they'll just pick off the pieces on it. Give them a nice varied diet of food, obviously include the vegetable matter, some protein as well. So as far as tank mates go for guppies, guppies are definitely a very peaceful fish. There are a variety of fish that will go with guppies. One of the things you do want to consider in terms of tank mates are your goals. So for example, if you're wanting to breed a lot of guppies, I wouldn't put them with fish that would eat the fry. I know I've seen people put guppies with angelfish, but angelfish will predate on the fry, or any other fish really where the guppy fry would fit in its mouth. So you really don't want to have a fish that will nip at the fins of the guppies at all. So things like tiger barbs probably wouldn't be a good idea. Even some tetras that would nip at the fins as well. But guppies do go with a variety of different fish. One of my favorite combinations actually is to put guppies with something like a cherry shrimp. The guppies really won't bother the cherry shrimp or its babies, and the cherry shrimp won't really bother the guppy or its babies either. So kind of a nice little, little tandem there. Throw some plants in there, some nice aquascape, and you've got yourself a pretty good tank. So starting with a healthy specimen is the key to success when you're keeping your guppy. So when choosing your new guppy, you definitely want to make sure that it's healthy. Make sure none of the fish in the tank that you're looking at has any sort of white spots in it. Nothing has any sort of fungal growths on it or anything like that. Also, you want to make sure that the fish is carrying its tail well, especially the males. You don't want to get a fish that can barely hold up its tail. Definitely you do want to make sure it has a strong peduncle, which is the area right before the fin. Make sure that's nice and thick. Also want to make sure you don't have any red spots on the fish. Also make sure to check out any of the other fish in the tank to make sure they're not showing signs of illness as well. So guppies are definitely some of the easier fish to breed. From a breeding perspective, you do want to provide some hides for the fry. That's primarily done with plants. A lot of times I'll use something called Najas grass or guppy grass. Also hornwort's another good one as well. Or you can just use some of your other regular aquarium plants like crypts, Vallisneria, etc. But generally give the fry some hiding places either with rockwork, plants, and you'll have plenty of guppy fry. So in order to sex your guppies, the males will have an organ called a gonopodium, which is in their anal fin. So they'll have a stick-like appendage on their anal fin instead of the normal kind of delta-shaped anal fin like the females will. In a lot of cases, the males will be more brightly colored with the larger tails. Over time, though, the females have developed color as well, which is actually pretty nice, pretty cool. But in general, the females will also be larger, males will be smaller, and then the male will mate with the female with his stick-like appendage. About 30 days from that point, she will drop some fry. Have probably, I think I've even seen up to 600, but generally it's probably about 30 fry or so. As long as they have some cover, they'll free swimming, they'll eat fine. Feed them. That's why I like the, like I said earlier, the Aquarium Co-op fry food. They'll feed the fry all the way up to the adults. Definitely, guppies are a fun fish to breed. If you are breeding for a specific line, obviously you do have to get into culling. At least for a lot of the cull fish in my projects, they just end up in a mutt guppy tank. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you did find it informative. I really do enjoy guppies. I know a lot of people consider them a beginner fish, but they are definitely a lot of fun. Get the different colors, different tail shapes, see what you could breed, play around with the lines a little bit if you'd like. So if you made it this long, definitely check out some of the videos here that come at the end. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit the subscription button, ding the notification bell, so you don't miss any other further updates here from the Fish Tank Barn. So with that being said, stay fishy, keep on breeding. We'll catch you on the next video.